This is Lenovo's Yoga Book. It's a 1.5-pound two-in-one that works as a traditional laptop, a tablet, folds in the tent mode, goes flat, and runs either Windows 10 or Android 6.01 Marshmallow.
At 9.6 millimeters thin, it's about the thinnest two-in-one we've ever seen with a built-in keyboard.
And it's that keyboard, not the thickness, that makes this different. The Yoga Book's Halo keyboard has no actual keys. It's actually just a sheet of glass that uses backlighting, capacitive sensors, and vibrating haptic feedback to simulate keys.
And at the touch of a button, the keyboard turns into a fully functional Wacom tablet. Lenovo calls it the Create Pad, and using its included real pen, you get Wacom's Field Tech, 2048 pressure levels, and 100 degrees of angle detection in an incredibly portable package.
But how does it actually perform as either a laptop or a Wacom tablet? Patrick, you've been using this for a little bit, so today let's go discuss it and review it.
All right.
All right, Patrick, let's talk about the Yoga Book first as a laptop. I see you have Windows 10 there, and there's that keyboard with no actual keys.
It's the weirdest thing, right? You're looking at it, it's a laptop, it's got the watch hinge, everything looks really sweet, magnesium aluminum case, and can I type on this thing? And it turned out actually I can, probably not while the camera is rolling, but I had 3 or 4 people looking over my shoulder and then trying it out, and the one thing we found was that people with long nails have a problem. And if you're a touch typist and you leave your hands on the keys, you'll kind of lock the keyboard up. But once you figure out how to keep your fingers above the keys rather than on the keys, it was really easy. The biggest challenge for me was actually the fact that the buttons for the touchpad are on the left and the right, which is an odd location. And there's only 2 finger scrolling. And other than that, there's not a lot of multi-touch.
Right. I mean, I remember when tablets first came out and there were just digital keyboards, and it took practice to be able to type fast on something like an iPad keyboard, but people are plenty fast now. Does the haptic feedback actually help?
The haptic feedback helps, but it gets annoying after a while, and depending on what your desk is like, you might actually hear every single keystroke kind of vibrating through the desk. So, you can turn off the vibration on key press, you can turn off the touchstone, and you can turn down the brightness. We were kind of surprised how on a couple of the desks in our office, we could hear the vibration of the laptop against the surface of the desk. Turning that vibration off, that made it a lot quieter.
And I see that the keys are outlined on that pad. Now, that's not a dynamic backlight, is it? You just turn it off there.
Yes.
You turn it back on. It's not a screen.
It's not a screen. It's basically an outline. You're not going to be like watching a totally separate screen over here. It does 2 things. It shows the outlines of the keys, and then it goes into the touchpad mode where I can use the real pen and I can start drawing with things. Feel free to mock my drawing. I did have people who can actually draw work with this. But yeah, do a thicker line, do a thinner line. The more pressure, the less pressure. Again, no one's going to mistake me for an artist. But the basic premise works, and friends that can draw actually managed to create some decent artwork with this.
We mentioned earlier that it runs either Windows 10 or Androids. With the x86 model, are you going to be able to run real Windows apps on this? Like web browser, I presume, no problem.
I'm actually running, so I got to use it again for about a day before we shot the video. I don't want to render video on this thing. The Atom processor is something less than exciting in its performance. But in terms of having a bunch of windows open, I had Google Docs open, Sheets, several browser windows, and Tidal playing in the background. There were no issues. I don't want to be editing videos in Adobe, Creative Suite. But other than that, I was pretty comfortable with basic day-to-day usage.
Right. And how's that screen quality?
The screen looks good. There's a little bit, if you have a very dark scene, you can see a little bit of uneven backlighting on that. But in terms of using it for Netflix or the web or basic art, I had no issues with it. There is some dynamic color correction that some serious artists might have issues with because I do not think it can be disabled.
Right. So, that's the performance of the laptop. It's definitely not going to be your fully functional, desktop replacement. It's your companion laptop that you can run, Dropbox and have your files on, and also like running web browsers. No problem with Google Docs. Basically, as functional as like a Chromebook.
Yeah, or in some ways more functional than a Chromebook. I love Chromebooks, especially for family members that I don't want to do tech support for. But if I'm I don't want to have to redo all of my work and find new apps on Chrome or on Android in this case to travel. But in this case, I've got something smaller than my laptop, lighter than my laptop. easier to pack than my primary laptop. I don't want to render video on it, but for all the day-to-day stuff I do other than production, I can get it done on this and take up a lot less space in my bag.
Now, it's also supposed to work as a tablet. That's why it's like a two-in-one. And Lenovo Yoga series is famous for its ability to do a full 360 hinge. So does that work if you fold it all the way back? Can you just use it as a tablet for content consumption?
Absolutely. I actually spent several hours watching Netflix on this and sort of rotating between, I spent actually like about 20 minutes watching Netflix and a bunch of time typing, getting used to the keyboard with title in the background. But yeah, it's going to play anything, as long as you've got a web connection, it's going to play any video you want to stream pretty well. And if you get aggressive, turn the screen brightness up and, run a lot of Wi-Fi, you're probably going to get the battery life down to about 8 hours, but 8 to 10 hours I seem really comfortable with looking at for battery life. Let me get out of Marvel before we get a takedown notice.
Yeah, and Lenovo's Hinge, the hinges they've developed for their yoga series have really improved over the years. This one they call the watch band hinge, which I think the design maybe is a little divisive, but definitely there's no argument that the performance of the hinge is there. Like, it's really sturdy.
They're claiming 25,000 openings and closings before it starts to wear. I've probably done 50 and it hasn't changed at all. So, it's a little early to tell at this point.
All right, then how about this pen? Its use as a notebook, because this was kind of the dream of like Microsoft Courier way back then, before the Surface laptops.
It's kind of a crazy system. Most people I know, they take notes on a tablet or they type in a laptop, but very few people I know are actually, I think, I could be wrong about this, are gonna, hey, put a magnetic paper tablet on this, and you actually use this up to a centimeter away. Let me get an art pad up here again. And I can get up to a centimeter away and still use this. But the big thing that Lenovo is really proud of is that they've got a replaceable nib. You pull the old nib out, and it comes with 3 actual pens. Do not use the actual pen head on the tablet screen itself because you will actually get permanent ink on the tablet. But if you've got a sheet of paper, and up to about a centimeter of any paper will work, you can sit here and actually have, an ink copy of your drawing. And this is why I write for a living and test products and don't do art. But it works. If you want an actual physical hard copy and the digital copy, it does do what it's supposed to do.
I assume it comes with this pad, but you can use any pad. If the sensor isn't in the pad, it's what's on the keyboard.
Yeah, there's basically a big EMR sheet underneath this glass that the pen detects. I'm going to actually pull the real pen away before I manage to permanently ink stain it. But yeah, the idea is, if you can probably just see, right about there, there's a whole bunch of space between the pen right now, and it's going to work just fine. The book bag that comes in here, Lenovo's pretty proud of it. It's got magnets built in, so it'll hold itself down. The refills get a bit pricey. So what you can do is basically put any tablet you have and sit down, and let's try blue. And yeah, pretty much anything's going to work on here, up to a centimeter thick, give or take.
So Patrick, it looks like the Lenovo Yoga Book functions respectably as a laptop. Maybe not a desktop replacement, but can run your desktop apps. And it has a tablet mode, it has this novel wacom support, but who's really going to buy this?
I think a lot of artists are going to look at this and be like, this is amazing. I finally have this super tiny thing I can use, like the tablet I use at home or the Wacom tablet I use at home. I think most people, though, are going to be those folks that have actually tried to answer email or work on a spreadsheet when they travel. Maybe they don't want to carry their full-size laptop around with them, but they've had the experience of trying to answer email while using thumb typing on a tablet and went, this stinks, I need something better. I think that's kind of really tempting, and at $550 for the Windows version, $500 for the Android version, it's not nearly as expensive as a full-size notebook. Don't think I want it as my primary machine, but as a secondary machine, I think it's a lot more functional for a lot of people who just can't do what they want to do on a tablet.
And at that price point, you also get 64 gigs of storage, although there is some expandable storage on the side there.
There's not a ton of expansion, but you can, if you want to add more storage, you can put a micro SD card in here up to 128 gigabytes. And the micro USB port is also used for charging, which is great if you already travel with a giant battery to keep your phone charged. You can do HDMI out. And I should mention, Dolby worked on the speaker system on this. It sounds surprisingly large for something this tiny. When you're sitting there listening to Netflix, it was really impressive.
And from that angle, you can really tell how thin this laptop is, which is really impressive. It goes to show the type of form factors you can make with full Windows 10 on a laptop running an Atom processor. Now, we did say there were two models for this. There is a Windows 10 version and an Android version. If I was in the market for the Yoga Book, I'd pick up the Windows 10 version.
I'm right there with you on Windows. One nice thing, everybody other than the US gets the advantage. They can do micro SD and a nano SIM card inside of that slot on the side.
And I could definitely see maybe students would be in the market for this, something to take to the classroom and also do some note taking.
And watch a little bit of Netflix when you're not studying.
Yeah, it's a really interesting product. I'm glad that Lenovo is experimenting with form factors. And thank you, Patrick, for bringing it in to review.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.